Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today for this amazing meetup with founders. We focus on helping growing networking founders in US, Canada, and other parts of the world. Every meetup or every call, we bring experienced professionals, founders, executives who've been in the trenches, who've done a ton of work, and they are happy to share their impact with others. So today, I'm very, very excited to have Mohamed Elnawawy with us. Mohamed is an ex or a CEO, a former CEO of Telecom Egypt, and who helped shape the internet and telecommunication infrastructure for millions of people around the world, specifically in Egypt. And he advised founders, investors, and organizations on emerging technologies, innovation, platforms, and building business for the future. Muhammad, I'm very, very excited to have you with us today, and I want to thank you for your generous time. I know how busy you are. I know, your schedule is not easy, but this is a great chance for us to meet you and learn from you. Would you mind just giving us a quick, intro about yourself and, your journey?
Sure, it's my honor. The energy I get from meeting young uh, young entrepreneurs and business people is just very rewarding. So thank you for giving me this chance. I graduated from computer science school in '92, and I co-founded with two other people the first internet service provider in Egypt. Uh, and and actually it was their idea. I was the third guy that was brought into the project, and the first lesson learned was to have good friends, because good friends can bring you into nice projects. I worked in this company for 8 years, and then we sold it to a regional telecom operator. uh, After that, I moved to the Telecom Egypt space, in the internet space, in the submarine cable space, and I ended up being the CEO of the company. And this journey lasted for about 26 years. It ended in 2016 when I also graduated from law school. My wife tells me, "You're a professional student. You've been studying all your life." And I think I am a little bit of that. And for the last 10 years, I've been a lawyer. As a lawyer, in mainly in the tech space, I get to work with startups, and technology has done a great job into penetrating almost every silo and every field, and accordingly, I find myself all over the place. Um, Much of my work is in Egypt. Less of my work is in America. In Egypt, the canvas in which we weave is a very large, populous country, 120 million people, two-thirds of which are below the age of 25, a third of which are below the age of 15. So very young, very populous. And the country, the region, will age quite beautifully in the next century as we become a little bit older. The addressable market, the addressable market will quadruple. The population will double, but the addressable market will quadruple. And I think it is like this in many other places in the world, certainly in Latin America, in the subcontinent, in America at large. And I believe that people are the source of wealth. So if you can understand your audience and work with them, you can be successful. I've prepared a few thoughts about what I want to say, and I apologize that some of what I'm going to say is going to be repeated, but because I'm an engineer and a lawyer, I just try to stack my ideas on top of each other in order to try to make an impression. So 100 years ago, land was the source of wealth. If you are in agriculture and you own land, you're doing good. And then the machine came and the value moved from the land to the factory, where the machine made efficiency and numbers and scale, and became the natural alternative for a more important source of wealth, even beyond the land. Uh, then information became the source of wealth, and certainly Amazon made us all learn in the 90s what this means, because it's a company that doesn't own land, doesn't own factories. They own the software that is able to embrace the customer experience and is able to deliver to the customer pretty much what the customer wants in a very smooth and clear way. And the lesson here was, if you own customer, if you are able to be in the forefront and own that important link in the value chain, you are able to hold perpetual value for a very long time. And the reason why the background of agricultural land and factory combustion engine and information technology is important for us to remember this is because each of these was quite a big shift. And society had to retrain and rediscover itself around every move. And the thing is that right now, as we speak, as we talk to each other, there are four different, what I call platforms of innovation, four different seismic shifts that are concurrently happening. And this has never happened before. And I expect society will change very much, very quickly. I mean, the sheer size of the compounded effect of these dynamic changes feeding to one another is something that I believe is huge. I cannot see the full picture. I will lean on you, the audience, to help correct. And if you agree, perhaps imagine what the society is going to look like. But it is a very large thing, and I am going to try to break it down into very simple words. The four platforms are very simple. They are health, genomics, what's going on with DNA sequencing and the ability to solve all protein structures of the human genome. And second is energy storage, the ability to store energy. Um, Robotics, and by robotics, I mean autonomous everything, not necessarily humanoids walking around, but also self-driving cars and uh, other devices that work on their own. And last but not least is blockchain, the ability to utilize public trust in order to get things done as a society. I'm going to very briefly just touch upon a very small uh, window of trying to understand some of these changes and their impact. So, for example, in genomics, I think the most important thing I like to talk about is the fact that the person who won the Nobel Prize for medical advancement in 2024 was a computer scientist, not a physician. And he got the award because he was able to leverage AI to solve all the protein structures and have the infinite number of possible iterations of the human genome to be sequenced and documented. And this opened up the door that a cancerous cell, the hallmark of the cancerous cell is mutational, continuous mutation. Once detected, this cell can be analyzed against that big table, and an antidote would be immediately found in 1 or 2 days. If you take this antidote, put it in mRNA vaccine and shoot it into the immune system of the person who's ill, you have an idea that this could activate the immune system to attack cancer and kill it. Now, in 2004, Fortune magazine had on its cover cancer, public enemy number one. And because of the advances in genomics, we could be quickly looking at the end of public enemy number one. And I'm sure there are smarter people that can describe what I am talking about. But I also want you to imagine the effect on the medical world, on the pharmaceutical world, and much more important, on the patients and their families. And you will realize that this is a great advancement that will also change society a little bit, change some of the priorities that we have been associating ourselves with. If we can go to something simpler like battery storage, and battery storage, we all see what's going on with electric cars. They're getting better, and the batteries are getting more better ranges and better charge times. But also, if you look at home storage, home battery storage, so the ability to store battery, to store energy in the home, this is something also that will be seismic, because the horror of any grid is peak time. Some people anticipate that peak time is usually the grid needs to be designed to address peak time, and that usually includes a lot of redundancy. So if you are able to store energy, the use of the grid is going to change. I mean, set aside the fact that if you can store energy in the home, you'd usually also try to capture some renewable energy into that battery. But even if you are pulling from the grid, you will be able to be smart when you address the grid in order to keep the grid at a constant use. And that will just change so many investments that we have made into our grids worldwide. And the battery storage for the home is something very eminent. It is becoming very cost effective, and it will be something that is so simple, and the effect will be so drastic. Storing energy is going to be one of the four disruptive pillars that I'm trying to propose. Now, if we move to robotics or autonomous everything, I think self-driving cars is what comes to mind immediately. And the effect, we also medallion taxis being affected by the ride-hailing industry and the huge changes that happened in that space. Now imagine if some people assess the cost of the driver to be 50 to 80% of the ride. Now, if you take out this cost and the car factory becomes a production facility that has a conveyor belt that just chips out cars that immediately go down, start offering car as a service, autonomous car as a service, that goes back to charge electricity, that goes back to get maintained all on its own. And cars as a service can be very cost effective because the human element is not there. And you can imagine that this will probably be something extremely welcome by society, but also will require some changes. And I personally worked with the ride-hailing industry in our part of the world as it came in and disrupted some of the elements and some of the social elements related to the traditional medallion business or the traditional taxi. Now, blockchain or public trust is something that I think not only has a technological impact, but has a serious societal impact. Blockchain, when we talk about blockchain, very often issues related to cryptocurrency come up. But more important than just plain vanilla cryptocurrency, we're talking here about an alternative reference system. Historically, mankind has used gold, precious metals, to be the reference which was used to earmark fiat or currency, and that some countries delinked, and that changed the way global economy works in more than one way. But the fundamental reason for you needing a reference system like gold is infallible, gold is scarce, and gold is accepted. Well, today you can use blockchain to have not just a truly infallible digital asset. It's not scarce, it's finite, it's beyond scarce. Accepted, well, it's not yet that accepted, but if it gets to be accepted, that could be very interesting. And the reason why I say this is because it is This form of public trust, if it comes out and society is able to use the internet in order to govern something as principle as money, um, then this will open other doors. I mean, some people are thinking, well, if the data, public data, is monetized for advertising, there's a question that comes up every now and then: can we replace sales tax for advertising revenue? In the unlikely scenario where the state runs the social media, can the ad revenue replace sales tax? The funny thing is, in some Western jurisdictions, this has been studied, and the two numbers are very similar. So, is there a public benefit that can be gained from this public trust infrastructures? Now, when I meet entrepreneurs and they give me a chance to talk to them, I always say one thing. I say, think full stack. And by think full stack, I mean, if you don't have brand equity and you own customer experience, and hopefully you own data, and perhaps even original data, and you're analyzing this data in order to decide what to do next, you are probably in trouble. It is very important that we understand that mankind had a nice technology that came out in the 50s, which was called artificial intelligence. Some people say the name came from a paper written by Turing in 1950. Others say no, it came out from the Dartmouth Convention in 1955. Irrespective, it was just a concept, and the concept evolved, and then came the AI winter. The AI winter was when the technology was ripe but was not useful. And then the internet came in the 90s, everything got connected, and then social media came and lots of data was present. So we pulled that technology from the winter, and we allowed this technology to train on these vast data on the internet. And a new product has emerged out of this data, which is the AI product, which is becoming the name of the game now. Now, I totally respect that, but I keep reminding myself and any entrepreneur that I talk to is that the source of the perpetual value is the data. It's not the tech. The tech has been around for more than half a century, but it's the data. I also point out that great companies like NVIDIA, for my generation, NVIDIA was very well known because they were doing great processors, graphics cards that allows us to play games. And to do graphics, you need to multiply matrices, and hence parallel math, hence the need to actually go into this realm, which by coincidence, sheer coincidence, was very important for AI, because in AI, you need to separate data, not using y equals mx plus c or the straight line. You need to do hyperbolas, and hyperbolas need matrix multiplication in order to be drawn properly. So it's a company that was right in the middle of this and captured all of this innovation and opportunity in order to make something amazing. But I wonder if there is more amazing things coming up. Um, uh, Building statistics about what the correct next word should be is what large language models do. So if you think that there is an eye in the sky that is listening to everything I say and building statistics about the words that come out of my mouth and yours subsequently also, and then every time I say the temperature now is, from a statistical point of view, it will be either warm or cold. But if your skin feels warm, then the probability is going to be warm, not cold. And once I say your skin feels warm, that's general intelligence. That is when you have another parameter, another scientific fundamental parameter in order for you to build the learning feedback into the AI system in order to make better decisions. It's going to happen very fast, and the shift is going to be amazing and quite severe, and we're in the middle of all of this. The younger people are the luckier people, I think, because they are going to be able to address this very young and important market that is evolving in the Americas and in the Southern Hemisphere. And I think that for major platforms, and feel free to introduce additional platforms or remove some, but from my point of view, four major platforms that are giving feedback into one another and changing the face of almost everything. The last thing I'm going to say is I really like what the CEO of Amazon, the new CEO of Amazon, said a few months ago. He said very simply, we are living the reinvention of everything. And I think this is where we are right now. Thank you.
Amazing, Mohammed. Again, you open tons of doors, lots of questions, lots of, areas that we all, are wondering now. And I see, Dr. Barnabas have his hand raised, and I'm sure so many other questions. So I'll maybe give a chance for the folks to ask you questions to, gain wisdom. Dr. Barnabas, if you wanna, unmute, introduce yourself and then ask your question, please.
Good
Yes, go
morning,
for it.
good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. I'm Barnabas Roundtree, based out of Washington, D.C. area in the U.S. I found this to be fascinating on a variety of different levels. I think you touched on the major 4 points that you touched on. I think are things that have the immediate impact and the things that you talk about. I guess one of the, I would say, concerns or challenges that I have as I listen to the optimism to which you present these ideas is, as those things change, it takes generations to make up the workforce to be able to change the workforce to do the things that are going to need to be done to make that happen, is one concern. I don't consider that a concern, but one issue that you talked about is the younger folks are going to be able to identify with this more so than some of the older folks. But I think the concentration of wealth and the concentration of knowledge in the way that it's happening gives me pause, because it's very different than any other time in history, I believe, to where you have the top 1% of a population dominating the technology in the way that it's dominated now, and making the decisions that are being made as it relates to how those things are going to play out, right? I don't know how fair that playing field is going to be as it relates to other people being able to come about and do some of the things that they do. But thank you so much for talking about this. Like I said, it raised a lot of thoughts in my mind, and I went in a lot of different directions from it. But thank you for the insight and the conversation.
Thank you. So I agree with you. I just want to say I claim to be a liberal realist, and while I think that while I think that blockchain has a chance to change the way we do things, let me just let me point out something. Facebook, for example, it's an excellent platform. They've been around since the late 90s, so now nearly 30 years, and there's so much data on it. But the value of tomorrow's data for Facebook, in my opinion, is maybe half the value of Facebook. So tomorrow's data is as important as the last 30 years. And the day after tomorrow's data is going to be as important and as the last 30 years and one day. The reason why I'm saying this is, can you imagine if society decided to leverage the internet in order to have social media used away from the central control of a corporation. I mean, why can't society look at this? I mean, why can't society look at, can we have the social media run? I mean, the value in the social media, the product that came out of the social media is advertising. So it's surveillance. Let me try to say more. So back in the 90s, if a company is going to listen to communications, not to harm the users, but to give them advertising products, the executives in this company will go to jail. But there was a decision, a brilliant decision in the late 90s, I believe it was the Clinton era, that at the federal level, there will be no law that is requesting privacy on social media. And accordingly, that exacerbated the advertising business model on social media. And that business model became a very good idea, because the result 20 years later is that 5 companies with a cumulative market cap of $11 trillion, 4 of them are in America and 1 is in China. So obviously, whatever the folks did in the late 90s, it was a very good idea. It was good for the American strength, economic strength. But the question now is, and mind you, now another product is coming out which is related to AI, because it is again using this data. So data is the source of the advertising business model. It is the source of the AI. And some people are saying data belongs to you and I. I mean, it's the data of my movement and my email, and the data related to what I'm saying. Why can't I monetize this to my own benefit? So the thought now is, how can this happen? And you have some people playing around with this. I mean, there's a small platform called Mastodon, and there's another one called Blue Sky. They're trying to play around with this concept where they're saying, give power to the people. You know, we're gonna let the community run its own social media presence, and the value that is generated out of this data can be monetized by the community. I mentioned the fact that ad revenue and sales tax correspond to one another in a jurisdiction like North America. And maybe that would be something that the society needs to look at. Now, I do agree. I am very worried that there's concentration, and not the good concentration, not the concentration that is based on innovation and doing what's next. You have to. There's an expression, and some of my friends disagree with this expression, is that human intellect is becoming a commodity. I mean, large language models are very good when the data is structured. And that's why they are able to write text, because it comes from language, and language is structured. And that's why they're even better at writing software, because software is even more structured than language, than text. So the more the data is structured, the better the ability of the language model to present. Now, if programming is not a challenge anymore, the name of the value, the perpetual value, is what data you have to feed. And I remind myself, you know, I'm the source of the data. My community is the source of the data. Even if I haven't been successful or active in the last 30 years, I've been on the receiving end, I've been exporting raw data and importing enhanced services. I can change this very quickly, because tomorrow's data is much, much more important than the last 30 years.
So can I
Yes, please.
interject and ask a quick question? Just to and then I'll be quiet, I promise. So as
I
you
should be
say,
quiet. Go ahead.
as you say that, one of the things that pops into my mind though is that the data from an individual perspective is not as private as it once was, right? So you say the data comes from me. Well, the data doesn't necessarily come from me per se. The data comes from everything that I do. So if everything that I do has the ability to be monitored, you have my data, right? So again, I think the scales are kind of off balance as it relates to looking at it from the perspective of saying I have the ability to prevent you from doing something that I don't want you to do, which I used to have, right? 40 years ago, 50 years ago, I used to have the ability to do that. If I didn't share it, it wasn't shared. But in today's world, which is a very different concept, you talked about NVIDIA and game chips and all of those. So as we have these digital, or as we digitize the economy and digitize all of the things that we do, the data, I no longer own my data. Verizon owns my data as it relates to the phone, right? Verizon has ideas on everything that I do on my phone. They have my internet service. So all of these commoditized things, the ability to commoditize these things have been bought up already. So that's where, again, the concern that I have is that we don't have that, the ability, I should say we don't have it, the ability for us to push back in ways or traditional ways that we used to is growing smaller and smaller, and we're not cognizant of that fact.
I hear what you're saying. I think that the telcos are not in charge. The telcos, they work in layer 0, layer 1, layer 2. Your data is layer 3 and above, and telcos do not see layer 3 and above. But I do see your point that there is cameras in business, there is legitimate interest devices everywhere. So there is a lot of data that is being collated, even when I'm not the source. Or but but bear with me and rest assured that if we're able to create perhaps for our next meet, you will have had a look at Mastodon and Blue Sky and the platforms. Blue Sky was founded by the same gentleman who made Twitter. These are two platforms that are trying to engage and see if that idea of the society monetizing its data for its own benefit is workable. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I agree with your earlier point. Something needs to be done. There's an accumulation of value and wealth where it's questionable if this wealth makes sense. I have a quick story related to Google. Larry and Sergey tried to sell Google in the 90s to Excite. This is public information. You can Google it. You can fact check me. And the deal did not fall through. And they were trying to sell the search technology. The value that did not happen was $1 million. They were selling their search technology to Excite in the late 90s for $1 million, and it did not go through. Please check it. Now, they hired Eric Schmidt, and Eric Schmidt changed the way they think. And they said, let's launch a service called Gmail, where we're going to let people have a great email experience. And we're going to let computers read these emails in order to see what is it that the people are talking about in order to be useful. So if they're talking about traveling, we'll send them information about prices on holidays, hotels, and tickets. If they're talking about cars, we'll give them information about cars. So that was one man who said, we're not going to sell technology for $1 million. We're going to profile users and give them targeted advertising. And of course, we all know that in the last few years, Google was the first one of the first $1 trillion companies, and is now well into more than several $1 trillion worth. The difference between technology and between the technology and a data company is immense. I advise the entrepreneurs that talk to me, my customers, if you're not a customer data company, you're not there. You're not successful. And yes, I agree with you that society needs to feel how is it that society can change how can society benefit more from this incredible source of perpetual value, which is data, the user's data. And I will think more about what you said about the fact that there is now cameras everywhere, and I'm not the only source for my data. Although I want to think about it more. But thank you. You've brought up a great point.
Thank you, Dr. Barnabas. Thank you, Mohammed, for answering this. There is a question in the chat. I'll read it for you. I'm seeing a discount between people's understanding how AI can only help your business if it has access to your data. And unfortunately, Canada ranks near to the bottom of the G7 in labor productivity and overall digital competitiveness. How do you think we can close that gap?
So I'll point out to some facts, and I not presume that I can give Canada advice. I mean, but I can just share with you, AI is an old science. 1955, and the science is not able to do much. And at a certain point, the science went into the winter of being useless. And it was the internet and the data that came out of the internet. So 1994, World Wide Web came out, and late 90s, social media came out. And it was based on this that everything changed. And AI was able to train. And as a result, you're seeing those fantastic products, which are not nearly as important as general intelligence products, which are also around the corner. Once we're able to have this reward system between natural parameters and the learned parameters of the language models, we're going to reach another point altogether. If you look at the innovation platforms which I proposed, none of them is AI. AI is common to almost everything, but the name of the game is to look at fundamental pieces of these platforms which I'm proposing, and to try to drill down and see how they can evolve and change. And I am sure that the most important thing right now is young people and education. I think this is the most important thing right now. This is what's going to help us, as a lot of the elements of our society, a lot of the jobs change. We spoke about medallions and taxis and how ride hailing affected medallions and taxis. Now, can we imagine how autonomous cars is going to affect all these drivers, albeit the social gig worker drivers, all the traditional medallions, or the traditional car manufacturers? Because when cars is service very ubiquitous and the cost goes down by 80%, many people will think twice about buying a car. So if you can imagine the change that will happen in the society, you would want a generation of well-educated people to handle this change. Now, if you take a good change, like for example, the imagination that we could be defeating public enemy number one, cancer, there are thousands of great physicians, oncologists, and the support staff in oncology departments is usually maybe the ratio 1 to 20 between the physician and the rest of the staff. So all of these teams need to do something else, and that would be a great day. I mean, that would be a great day to society when we have less need for the people who work in this field, because we have won over this horrible disease, this public enemy number one. But you can imagine there is a lot of training. Now, who will be able to do this training? It will be people who are well educated, who are strong, who understand the fundamentals, who are able to pivot, nice business term, who are able to pivot into other areas of serving the society. the comments I made about the grid, and these are very important comments because, again, designing the grid for the peak is as wasteful as it can get, and if battery storage into the home becomes ubiquitous, then the grids that we have designed will be able to carry us forward the next some decades without upgrades, because the grids are going to be utilized differently. Now, how about the workforce that has been working on this? If they're well educated, they're going to be, they will pivot. Back 100 years ago, when the source of wealth was owning land, to own a big piece of land, you need many people to take care of this land and protect this land. And then somebody invented gunpowder. And all of a sudden, you don't need that many people because you can give them guns. So the number of people you need to protect your land has went down considerably. In law school, they tell us that this is the reason why organized crime happened, because there was those people whose job was protecting the land, and they found themselves jobless. Now, society has went through this, and I think the best thing that Canada can do, if I may, is just educate the young people, the fundamentals, make sure that they're able to pivot around all the innovation that's going to happen, which will be immense, quick, and multifaceted.
I love it. Again, tons of wisdom. We can't get enough. I think we'll need hours and hours from your time, Mohammed. But I don't see hand raised. I don't see question in the chat. Let me see. I think there might be. Okay. So I have a question to you. And again, you mentioned that owning data is one of the important things today for entrepreneurs. So for those who just started, what would you tell them to do? Like, again, I just started my business 2 years back, and it's running. I own some data, but I definitely not like Facebook or Google or those big giants. So what do you think I should focus on more as a founder, as an entrepreneur, in order for me to scale my business? And let me know if you have questions about my type of business exactly.
Yeah, so a friend of mine is trying to get started in the healthy drinks space in our part of the world, and on the can, he has a barcode that if you scan and you make a user ID, you'll get discounts on future drinks. And the reason he's doing this is because he decided that although I'm just a can, I want to know who's drinking me. And I want to know where is he, because he will have the app on the phone, which he will use to scan. So I want to know who's drinking me and where is this person drinking me. It's an all data world. The name of the game is data. The data that you collect and analyze, some of them will affect tomorrow's decisions, some of them will affect further in the future. If you're starting a business, if it's an old stack, if you own the customer, if you're building brand equity, and if you consider yourself first and foremost a customer data company, I think you're on the right track. I think it's. I wish I was 20 again. It's a great opportunity to be starting out in this environment. It is a little bit crazy because we haven't had companies of the magnitude of numerous trillion-dollar companies around. So sometimes it's scary. The concentration is scary, but I remind myself this all happened in a very short while, and it's not over yet.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Again, I don't see questions from the group, but I can continue ask you a few questions Again, I'm really curious, like you have a computer science degree and then you move to law. Tell us a little bit about, that move, tell us what did you learn again from law while you already have that computer science engineering, mindset. That's definitely a big shift for some of us to understand. So I'm really curious to learn how did this come for you and what happened?
It came from the 90s. Regulation and liberalizing telecom services was happening in the 90s in Egypt and in several parts of the world. And it was very clear to me that what will make a difference is technology and regulation. So I needed to understand more how facility-based competition can evolve, competition law, certainly consumer protection, and I tell you, I loved it. I just fell in love, and next thing I know is 26 years later, I've been lucky enough. I held great telecom related jobs in Egypt, and I also graduated from law school, and I've been doing it for the last 10 years. I miss having a big team because it's a little bit of solitary industry. You are ultimately an advisor to a client, part of the client's entourage, but not part of the client's business plan. It has been great. You get exposed to different entrepreneurs and how they think, and try to be part of the solution. I pointed out I worked in the ride-hailing space for about a year and a half, and I also realized that a very important part of the lawyer's work is related to public policy. And certainly I understood the tech, and I was able to explain the point of view of my client to the concerned, the stakeholders. The stakeholders included everyone from the unions to the government, and sometimes it feels good that you know that it's such an important issue that consensus has to be reached, no matter what. And that made a lot of sense. Perhaps in next year, if I did not bore you guys to that, we can talk about submarine cables, because this is another thing that I put 10 years of my life in, and these are such important resources that carry the internet traffic, and they're also global in their nature, and they're built with consensus. So the reason I brought this up is because I think that word consensus is very important, that once the asset is very important or the resource is very important, we need to agree on how to evolve. And if we work hard enough, even patiently tolerating some changes that are necessary, society can progress with consensus.
I love it. Thank you so much. I want to bring some folks from the group to ask questions. I'm not sure if Barbara, Arif, Andrea, any questions from your side you want to ask Mohamed?
Yeah.
David.
So my background is also telecom, Mohamed. I worked at Bell Canada for a number of years and then moved to Kitchener-Waterloo for BlackBerry, where I have some IP. So I think we have some parallel experiences. One of the hats I wear is in government relations, and I think you hit it on the head with respect to policy. Really, ultimately, it's about a balance between the private sector and public sector interests, the public good, if you will. But even that is a subjective qualification, right? Right now, we're in the process in Canada of having, a former news anchor leading our AI portfolio, and there's a lack of seriousness around an understanding. So I don't really have so much a question as I kind of echo what you're saying. I find it very frustrating, though, when it comes to policy, that we have people making decisions who aren't necessarily informed. We're in a position now in Canada where we're going to be negotiating our free trade agreement with the United States. Not one person who's going to be representing Canada has a background in tech. It is a threat for our sovereignty around digital and technology innovation. I'm in Canada's innovation capital in Waterloo region. And, my concern is that we miss the boat. And once we miss the boat, and in terms of productivity, innovation, and this is a world that I'm in, that playing catch up the gap's going to be too big. So, my mom was from Cairo, so I hope that everything in Egypt is going really well. And there's an early adoption in terms of tech. But my concern as I'm trying to really push the agenda forward around AI adoption and productivity and working with a member of parliament around AI policy, which is first and foremost for me, I think we as individuals can keep asking questions and asking, our politicians ultimately, what is in the public good and what does that mean? And what are you doing about it? Because right now, I don't think they're doing as much as they can. So that's a long-winded comment, but it was a pleasure to hear you speaking about telecom and the progress in the last 26 plus years.
Well, Canada is a hallmark of successful regulation. There is a concept that we often talk about, which is called net gain to society. And that expression is present in your country's laws, and it says that don't just look at the headline, don't just look at the first few lines of the memo. No, we need to read the whole story and deepen the analysis and project forward in order to understand the net gain to society or the lack thereof, and make better decisions. I hear what you're saying about that the team should be multidisciplinary. The team should have great lawyers, great finance experts, and also tech people. I hear what you're saying very well. Certainly, I'm surprised because obviously you have amazing human resources that can do an amazing job. But I'm less worried because, as I pointed out, so much change happened in the last 20 years, and so much more change will happen in the next decade or 2 or 3. And the fact that data is the name of the game, data is what will make things change and change very quickly, that sometimes, for Egypt at least, I don't want us to follow in the steps. I want us to maybe skip some steps and move to something better altogether. So, for example, earlier one of the attendees was talking to me about can data be monetized to the welfare of society? I tell you, if somebody gets it right, if Canada gets it right, the change will be profound. The model that exists now, that there are fewer companies that are monetizing data on behalf of everybody else, taking in our raw data and selling to us various enhanced products. I think this model in of itself cannot continue. That's my personal opinion. Yeah.
May I just follow up with a comment? So there was an undertaking in Toronto. I led the artificial intelligence go-to-market for Microsoft Canada, and when I was there, I was following this very closely. Google attempted to do this in Toronto with a pilot project called Sidewalk Labs, where basically they put forward the fact that in this particular it was a geofenced area, there would be a number of different, sensors collecting all sorts of data from transactions to movement to whatever, and that people would be giving up that privacy, but they would be reaping the rewards of how that data would then be synthesized and provided back to them. And I came in a little bit late, but you mentioned around advertising. That's basically what they were trying to do, is sell products. There was really no, it was the illusion of the public good wrapped in, basically a profit motive, which I'm not against profit. But there was kind of this approach, and basically they canceled it because there was so much uproar. So again, this push-pull between the public good and the private good, I think, is something that policy may or may not get right. But I've seen it happen, playing out in the real world, and I don't think we've got that model right quite yet.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara, for the 2, 3, and smile. Awesome. Thank you so much again, Muhammad. Tons of wisdom, tons of information, and lots of thoughts. There is so many questions in the chat. I'm not sure if we'll be able to cover everything, but David, go ahead with your question, and then we'll take Ahmed Sherbini's question after that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin after all that, right? So I mean, I'm like a 20-year Nokia guy. I've worked 20 years, never worked in America. I used to run Middle East and Africa for Nokia for deployment in Asia, Europe. So I've seen 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G in my life. I mean, just keep going back and back and back around the world. I just came back from Jakarta Sunday, and I presently work in Nexus One. We do software solutions for data centers, MNOs, fiber companies, large companies like Deutsche Telekom and Ooredoo, a lot of companies like that. And it's quite interesting about AI, right? Because when I'm over there, like just last week, they said, whatever you do on your whole software platform, Dave, we want AI. I go, what do you want? They're like, we don't know. We just want it. So that's the push we have, is to educate people about, okay, we have to kind of like use the buzzwords for AI. It may be simplistic, it could be complicated, but they want AI across everything that they do without knowing what they want. So it's quite interesting. And I sat through a event last summer in Bali. It's called Batik, with China Telecom as a guest in their internal meeting. So for 2 hours, all they talked about was submarine cabling and data centers and selling capacity. That's it. That's all they're doing. So that's a very simplistic global approach, like you're talking about submarine cabling, right? So that's what they sell, is the data, capacity, bandwidth, landing data centers on every continent on the world, and reselling that bandwidth. So it's quite I'm kind of switching my way of working away from like Nokia way of working, which is like building countries, to now it's all about AI, software, data, pipeline, backhaul. So the world's changed. So I just want to make that comment. That's kind of interesting what you're talking about here.
Well, I hope this brings you over to Egypt, because, as you know, almost every submarine cable system that comes from the Asia Pacific, around the subcontinent, into the Indian Ocean, into the Red Sea, through the Gulf, east coast of Africa, everything there connects to everything in the Mediterranean and onwards through Egypt. And for 10 years, I was responsible for this infrastructure. So we have a disproportionate amount of exposure to international telecom facilities. And back in the days, in 2015, the number was 3 terabits of transit data flows every second through Egypt. I think the number now is probably completely different. I apologize, I don't know the last number. And yes, this is an example of infrastructure that needs to evolve in a way where there is this consensus, where there is this agreement. I see more of the content players getting into this industry, as well as, of course, the telecom private cables. But the importance of building this consensus, this agreement on the greater good, is very important for this important industry to evolve successfully. It's an honor to meet you, and please come to our part of the world where there is a lot of submarine cables.
I lived in Dubai for 3 years, and I've been to Egypt. I got pictures of me on a camel around the pyramid.
Okay.
So I've been there.
Okay.
Thanks, David. Okay, Mohammed, I know time is running fast, but Ahmed Sherbini asked the question in the chat. Ahmed, if you wanna unmute and ask your question, please, that would be amazing. Otherwise, I'll read it. Okay, let me read it for you.
Thank you very much, Ahmed.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mohammed, for the informative and insights. As a former CEO, what's your advice for the current CEOs in terms to their organization, people, and financials? How they can manage this kind of three major elements in the current technological advancements?
Okay, my first advice to the leadership team in any company is you are a customer data company. That's what you are. If you feel that you're a technology company, you have a problem. If you feel that you are a financial company, you have a problem. You are a customer data company, and you should just build yourself around the customer and build the value of your entity intertwined with the customer data. Now, if you're in the telecom space, very good. You can take this further and try to be a support element to the personal infrastructure, because telecom is becoming the personal infrastructure of the user. If you are a bank, then you can go further and decide to be part of the success of this user, of this individual, albeit personal success or business success. If you are in any other space, define yourself as a customer data company and think full stack, because I get worried when I meet entrepreneurs that are thinking of becoming active in a small part of the value chain, thinking that this is good enough. It is not, because if you keep yourself within a piece of the value chain, you are going to be replaced, because the value chain and the efficiency around business priorities requires control, and control includes, of course, cost parameters and includes other things that just doesn't make sense. That unless you have something as amazing as the Dutch company that does the digital lithography for NVIDIA and for everybody else, unless you're this team, this one team that is able to be just into an element of the value chain and stay in it, unless you're this company, which is, I think, not realistic. You need to own clients, use their data in order to progress. Customer data company, think full stack, understand my ideas of the innovation platforms, or change them, or add to them, or reduce from them, but understand that there's tremendous innovation that is concurrently happening, that is going to change, and try to design the business that is going to be needed tomorrow, not the business that is being needed today. I think that one of the things that's going to happen in our lifetime very soon is that you will find that maybe there is going to be a merger between non-equals. Will telecom and banking get closer together? Will standalone content disappear and become either part of Amazon Prime or part of something else? Will the folks like Netflix and others need to own their international infrastructure in order to make sure that their data is prioritized properly? So I think that there will be changes, and these changes will be felt across board. But if I am an all data company, a customer data company, a company that is full stack, I'll be able to move around these parameters very well and be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So again, time flies, and I don't want to keep you longer, Mohammed. I know how busy you are, but again, I may ask you if you're open to come back to this community and share your wisdom. We have tons of questions, to be honest. Arif has his hand raised, but I want to respect everybody's time and keep this to 1 hour and 15 minutes. Don't want to take longer from you. and ask you, maybe I'll take this offline with you if you want to come back next month to do another session for everybody here. I think there's tons of question about blockchain, about other topic that you raised. Any final words from you, Mohammed, to this group?
I am just very grateful the energy you guys have, and I do realize that some of my answers are hopeful and general, but I've spent a lifetime of being very close to the real thing. I had an income statement, a balance sheet, cash flow statement. I had the KPIs, the priorities. I have the board. So I understand that business is cutthroat and very strong and very important. And I just don't want. I hope that Thankful Stack customer data company and embrace the disproportionate amount of change that is going to come up. If these are the three things that we walk away from one another thinking of, that would be great. And of course, I'd be honored to come back again. I don't know if I have much more to say, but perhaps I can listen also to your community and engage. It's certainly an honor for me.
Oh my God, it's an honor for us. And again, we really had so much wisdom and lots of thoughts to digest and come back maybe with more questions to you, Mohammed. Thank you so much again.